Hey you guys, today I am with John Thompson, Lake Martin Resource Association. And the question is why? Why am I here with John? Well, 4th of July, I think I actually contacted you the day after the 4th, did I not?
That's correct.
I know. So I was up here on the 4th at the lake, and I was seeing some I'm gonna call it boating gone wrong. Basically, lack of boating manners. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, because some of the lack of boating manners is causing a lot of danger to swimmers, other boaters, etc. So wanted to discuss, I know you're writing an article, or have written an article that's getting posted into the Lake Martin magazine?
That's Lake Magazine. It'll be out in the August issue. That's
okay.
Correct.
And tell us your take on.
Well, it's as one of my favorite heroes from Lonesome Dove, Gus McRae would
I love
say.
Gus. I love him.
Gus McRae would call it rude behavior.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think that's exactly what we have in a lot of cases with the large wakes that we're hearing so much about now. And it's one of the biggest complaints that we get is calling and complaining about the dangers created by boats, large wakeboard boats that are coming in too close to the shoreline and creating these huge waves that become 2-foot swells rolling up against the seawall or rolling up against floating docks and boats that are moored there, and they just really, favorite term I've heard is they're rocking and rolling when
Yep.
it's rolling across the seawall. And actually there's been some real close calls reported where some children were knocked off of a floating dock that was just rolling so bad that it threw the kids off, and one of them could have been trapped between the floating dock and the stationary pier.
Yeah.
And fortunately, one of the adults grabbed them up before they were able to be harmed too severely. But it is a big problem, and the problem that we hear from, and it's primarily around these wakeboard or wake surfing boats, but it's not just those.
Right.
And it's just being inconsiderate, not courteous, and not thinking about what's going on. These boats do create big waves, and if you come in too close to shoreline and you have this wake that you're not controlling, and it's 2 foot high, and you come in too close, it's going to roll in and it's going to create a big wash against the shoreline. So it's real easy thing to solve. Just stay out in open water.
Yeah. Stay
out to where, don't get in so close, and pay attention to what's going on around there. I think so many times, Amy, these young folks show grandma or somebody at the dock how good they are on these boards, and they're not thinking about what they're doing.
Right.
So, we've had all kinds of suggestions. Well, we need to create a law that says you can't have a wake within 100 foot or 200 foot of the shoreline, and that's great. We may have that. It actually is being introduced hopefully in this next legislature.
Yeah.
And hopefully will get passed.
That's hard to control, though. With not who controls that? We don't have that much. The amount of Marine Patrol that can control that. That's going to have to be all of us helping control that.
It is going to have to be all of us,
yep.
Because there's a law today that says that you're responsible for any harmful effect of your wake. If you create any damage or if you tear up anything, you're responsible for it. So there's a law today that says you need to control your wake. But the net out of it is it's all, you can do it with a large boat, you can do it with a small boat.
A wave runner,
Sea-Doo.
yeah, absolutely. I see wave runners come by. I call it Mach 10. Really close to the shoreline. Well, what if a kid is out there swimming and they don't see it? That scares me. I mean, how do you teach? My thing is, I'm very lucky, and I didn't at the moment think of this because my dad is like a boating Nazi, and I was raised like, extremely knowing every bit of the boating rules. Like, don't do this, make sure, even back down to getting your boat in the water, being kind to everybody around you, in and out, doing this, pulling up. I mean, every little thing. I feel very lucky. So now I'll go around, and this happened to me. So this is actually happened to me, and it's just a lovely little story. But I had my boat. I'm not going to even say where it was, but it was tied up to a dock, and a wave runner just like right around my boat, and my boat smashing. And I had my bumpers on, but we have little kids in the boat,
Sure.
you know, and it's just smashing against the tied up boat. And so I told the nice little lady that was riding on the wave runner to calm it down a little bit, just like I went like this because she's well. Then she looked over at me and went, like even more. Well, then I might, maybe did not do something I probably shouldn't have done. Well, like at 12 o'clock that night, my boat was sitting out in the middle of Lake Martin untied,
Well,
with muddy footprints on it. So that kind of like will scare you a little bit into going, well, maybe I shouldn't say anything because, well, I mean, these crazy people are going to untie my boat and, you know, it goes floating out. But I do think that people just don't know. Like, I see it and I'm like, do they know that this is dangerous? Do they know what the danger is? Do they know when they're pulling their kids on a tube out in front of Timmy Rock that their kids get easily bounced off and the next boater up could easily not see the kid's head in a wake? I mean, how do you teach people that? I mean, you can't.
That's sort of back to Gus's rude behavior type thing. And there are some people now that are beginning to be a little more aggressive on going out. And I had one guy call me, a good friend of mine, that says, you know what I've started doing? He said, I hopped on my Sea-Doo the other day. One came too close to me and was creating this huge wave. So I rode out to him and started taking pictures. So I pulled up to him and I said, well, I've got your picture and I've got your boat number, and if I have any damage created from that wake that you just had, I'm going to report you to the Marine Police.
So we can do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, anything that I think where we really call these people out on these situations like this. Now, truly, you may have the same type of thing where, in fact, another friend said that they took the opportunity and mooned them as they were leaving. And so, you know, that's the kind of attitude that you can get out of that. But the net out of it is, if we're not aggressive, if we don't do something to stop this kind of thing, it's number one, it's dangerous, but number two, it's eating up the shoreline.
Yep.
It is
Absolutely.
the erosion on this lake, and we've got to think about this lake being around for the next several hundreds of years.
Right.
So the more damage we cause to it, we're not being good stewards of Lake Martin.
I totally
and
agree.
I think we've got to be much more aggressive in stopping this type of action. There's plenty of water around here. There's 44,000 plus acres out here, 800 miles of shoreline to go around and enjoy the lake. So you don't have to be right up in these sloughs where all the houses are and the seawalls are and the people are. Another thing that can be done is to put out swim buoys.
Well, I was going to ask you, so my neighbors right here have the orange buoys. Is that what you were suggesting in your article?
That's what they would call them, is a swim buoy.
All right.
You're sort of marking off an area around your property, around your pier and your floating dock and your boat, to where you want to keep boats out of there. And the Marine Police are fine with that as long as you don't go out too far. They're saying 20 feet, you know, you could fudge on that a little bit and get by with it. But if you go too far out, they probably would come back and ask you to move it.
So my slough in particular is not a no-wake zone. I wish it wasn't a no-wake zone, but it is not. So how far do you think that, I mean, what is the suggested rate of them being away from the shore? Well, away from my dock?
A good rule of thumb, and we always encourage boaters to stay anywhere from 100 to 200 foot away.
Yeah. Don't
create a wake within 100 to 200 foot. Now, Georgia has a proximity law, and it's 100 foot. 100-foot proximity, no wake zone. And that's probably what, if we were able to get one, that's probably as much as we can expect. It'd be great to see 200 foot.
Yeah.
But 100 foot could be acceptable if people would observe it. You know, people have then, you've got back to the enforcement side of it.
Yep. One more question while I have it on my mind. So back in the 90s, that kind of dates me, but whatever. Remember when we had all the big cigarette boats on
Sure.
this like, I mean, it was just vroom. And now those have kind of been banned, correct?
That's correct.
And now we have they've been replaced with these wake boats.
Right.
So, I mean, is there any possibility they'll start putting a number on these wake boats? I mean, how can we control that a little bit? Because they do give a big wake.
They do create a big
Yeah.
wake, but again, it's like we talked about earlier. You know, you can get that same kind of wake with a pontoon boat.
you can.
Or you can get the same kind of wake if you're circling around out there with a wave runner.
Yeah.
So it's not the boat.
It's not the boat.
It's not the boat.
It's
It
just
is not
manners.
the boat. It's the operator. If the operator
Amen.
is 15 years old and not aware of the dangers of what he's creating, that's the problem. It's not being done, and that's not just to criticize the young folks. It's but I think parents are not really vigilant on watching what the kids are doing. They hand them the keys to an expensive big boat
A
and say,
very
go have fun.
expensive, an $80,000 boat. Since I mean, and they have 16-year-olds out there driving them.
Right.
And I think that's part of the culture anyway. You know, with the kids, they have a hard time. Parents have a hard time. I of course do not have a hard time saying no to my children. There's the kayak. You can take the kayak out. But I feel like with parents in general, they have a hard time saying no. I mean, you know, that's a $100,000 boat, whatever, because these cobalts that go really fast, and
yeah.
I mean, not that I don't want one or anything like that, but that is a huge issue as well, and the wave runners, because they just send the kids out on the wave runners, and sometimes
Exactly.
in a lot of cases, and then they go and they do the donuts and all that kind of stuff. That is causing a big problem. So I do definitely think that manners class. I wish they would add that to the boating test or something a little bit. You know, do you know anything about kind of why we do what we do? Again, I go back to the tubing out in the center of the lake that absolutely scares the crud out of me with these little kids, and that's because I was taught not to do that. But I do support the whole manners and thinking about what you're doing and thinking about other people and thinking about other people's investments.
You bet.
I mean, you know, we buy boats. We have boats. We have kids out here on Lake Martin. We have seawalls that need to be, you know, for many generations to come. And let's keep it safe and think about others before ourselves sometimes.
I totally agree with you, and
Yep.
I think it's something that can be controlled. You know, you can pass laws, you can have
Yep.
more enforcement, but it all comes back to that person recognizing what they're doing.
One thing you said in your article, and we'll wrap it up here, is that one way to maybe control this a little bit better, and I love this idea, is if you see somebody doing something, take a picture of it and post it on social media.
I'm
know?
so glad you brought that
Yep.
up, because
I love that.
it has worked so well with some of the litter problems that we've had on Lake Martin. And by calling people out on it and
Yeah.
showing them, putting them out there, let them see the person that's doing it,
Yeah.
you know, on
That is
on
embarrassing.
Facebook.
That's like one of the
You bet.
yeah.
You bet.
So-
I think the more of that we can do, you know, I think that is very, very effective. I'm glad you brought that one up.
Well, you really brought it up. So, you guys read his article. I appreciate you being here very
Sure
much.
thing. I'm happy to do it.
Anything else you'd like to add? Are we good?
No, I'm just happy to have an opportunity to really get this word out, because that's the only way we can do it right now, is through education.
I totally agree with that.
So we just got to make the issue out of it.
Well, I appreciate you being here. You guys remember, as I always in all my videos, home is the nicest word there is, and peace out, and keep Lake Martin beautiful.